don't know, it seems like we developed great people and they stay with us. I mean, Jackie, our GM at the mall, has been with us since we've opened. And she's been with us 26, 27 years now, whatever it is.
So we're also trying to look at the healthy side of it too, but also being creative enough in the plate presentation. So like you can come in now, you can get a elk burger with venison bacon on top of that. You can get venison meatloaf we have now. You can get a venison BLT. You know, you can get, one day we're featuring spaghetti with elk meatballs and stuff like that.
We are kicking off our Local Legends series. I think everybody here has been at one of our Local Legends podcasts, but for those of you that aren't familiar, the Local Legends podcast was designed to bring notable Oshkosh business leaders into a conversation about how we can share some of the wisdom and insights you've had over your careers with some different members of the Chamber and the Venture Project, our co-working space here. So today we're very fortunate to have two very special guests. We have John and Jay Supple, who are restaurateurs in our area, as well as many other business aspects that we're going to dig into on the show today. So without any further ado, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah.
You know, the one thing is, John, when they say legends, that we obviously been around a while, I guess.
It's a lot of gray hair. At least we have hair.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's hard to talk about starting a restaurant business in Oshkosh without having your names come into the picture because of the success you've had time and time again. And I think I just want to jump into it we'll get into your story. We'll kind of get into your background a little bit, but what would be your advice to someone if I came up to you and said, I want to start a bar or I want to start a restaurant? Where would you start with that? How would you start that conversation?
No, I think you have to realize that you're going to work the opposite of everybody else. You're going to work nights. You're going to work weekends. You're not going to be living on the other side of the bar. You got to get back in there. You got to get your hands dirty. You got to learn how to do every job, from cleaning grease traps, washing dishes, bussing tables, cooking. You better know it all, because if you don't know it all, you're going to get taken advantage of.
Sure. Do you have anything, Jay? Or
no,
what do you think?
I agree. Like John said, the learning curve is you just need to know every job that your staff knows. You know, I think John and I, growing up in it as kids, that's the one thing we did. You know, we did do, like John said, from dishes to grease traps to grinding cheese and stuff. There's really nothing our staff will ever do that we'll ever ask them to do that we haven't done. And I think that's critical to know that, because that's where your success is going to be, is knowing everybody's job, what they're doing and stuff like that. And you can help them no matter what the job is. And I think that's really been a lot of our success over the years. Because anytime you walk into any of our restaurants, you'll see John and I either in the kitchen or bussing tables or anything like that. We love to interact with, not only with our team, but also with the guests. So we know what the team's thinking, and we know what the guest is always thinking as well.
Yeah. Well, take me back to where this started for you. Obviously, your siblings, you're part of the same family. Where did this all begin?
I think Jay and we started in 1968 with my dad and mom with Shakey's Pizza. You know, we grew up there. Basically, we literally grew up there. My mom and dad had a pull-out couch and a TV in the office. So mom and dad basically couldn't afford to get a babysitter and have us sit at home all the time. So we'd work during the day. We'd go to school, go over there. Jay and I would be standing on stools grinding cheese or standing there washing dishes. I mean, right, Jay?
What a child.
We've done everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can remember blowing up balloons. If you remember Shakey's, they used to have the feet on the balloons and stuff like that. We did. There's, like I said, we said before, there's nothing we haven't done and stuff like that. But I think the cool thing about it was, as a family back then, like John said, there were certain things we couldn't afford and stuff like that. And then with Joe, with our brother, with cerebral palsy as well, he needed to be taken care of and stuff like that. And my mom and dad didn't want to put us somewhere. So as a family, we just stayed right there in the office, and we're with them all the time. And I think my dad, besides doing the Shakey's Pizza in 1968, he also was an engineer on the Sioux line for a number of years as well and stuff. So he was extremely busy, as well as my.
So you were kind of born into the restaurant business, for lack of a better word. Was there a choice when you decided you wanted to become restaurateurs, or was it just kind of a seamless transition? How did that work?
Well, I tried college for a year, and I decided I didn't want to be an accountant. I couldn't sit anywhere. I'm one of these guys that got to do 5 things at once, and I think that's what Andy's here today. He knows that. I mean, you've literally got to do in our business, you're doing 5 things at a time. You can't just do one thing. And I think that's what the restaurant life's all about. And, I was 19 when I started working in the business full time, running Shakey's in Appleton. Jay started right away in 18. I think you might have started that already.
Yeah, the same thing. I think with us is it was in our blood, obviously early, and I think we loved what we did so much. And I can honestly say, as well as John, our only boss that we've ever worked for in our life was our father. And I don't even want to call my dad a boss. And my mom, they were mentors. And my dad always he said, let's just work together and stuff. So we never really had what we'd say a boss per se. It was always more of a mentorship, and he guided us through working through the restaurants.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, because you've obviously seen how a restaurant matures, how it goes through different seasons of the business cycle. When you're looking at, let's say, another restaurant, is there indicators that it's not going to work out? What are those indicators? What are things that you're looking at to say, these are the things that I think will lead to success? These are the things that will lead to failure.
I think not changing. I mean, you walk into a place, they have the same menu, the same items for 5 years in a row, or they haven't changed decor. My brother is great at, he's got a great eye for that. We're constantly changing. But Jay, don't you get tired of this? I mean, we just put new artwork up at the mall. I mean, we never stop. We change. There's probably every month that we're changing our menu lately. I mean, he's done a great job with that.
How do you decide what you want to change versus what you want to keep?
I think a lot of that's trends. You follow trends. You look around the country. We're fortunate if we do get out and we see what's in Chicago. I was just in New York and stuff like that. And so when we're in these markets, we're not. I want to say we're eating in a lot of places, but we are. But a lot of times, I just walk in just to look at the operation, just look at the decor. And it's absolutely amazing how you can walk in any place and damn near walk into the kitchen and nobody says a word to you. So there's really, I don't want to say there's probably hardly ever off limits. And so we just walk in. I don't want to say like we own the place, but you just walk in and like you obviously got a knowledge of what you're doing, and you can pretty much walk anywhere you want. And I don't care if it's a hotel or where it's at. So you can learn so much just from that, that thing. But I was just going to say, to follow off of John's earlier, location is such a big thing too. And I see so many restaurants and other businesses, they go in B and C locations, and then they spend all this money on billboards trying to direct people how to get there. You'd be better off paying in an A location, not having to worry about billboards and all these other different things that have to tell people how to get there. Because if you're in an A location, realistically, you're going to have high traffic. And high traffic is your billboard. Perfect example is you look at Fox River Brewing Company right by the bridge. Probably 25, 30,000 cars look at us a day and stuff like that. So that's kind of our goal, is always to try to find places where they can be seen. The only thing I would say different to that is our Fratellos in Appleton. It's kind of down by the river. That was a little bit of a challenge, but the building and the view and the site was so cool that we knew it would take us a year or two for people to find us realistically. But once they found us, word of mouth is what attracts them there.
So that's an interesting thing, because I think where you guys are a little different than a lot of other restaurant owners is you'll own physical real estate at a lot of these locations, correct? And you're looking at traffic counts as kind of one of your main indicators for that, if not the main indicator. Are there other ones that you're looking at, or other things you're looking at when it comes to site selection?
Well, I think you're looking at that. I think you're looking at the demographics around there, what's around your area and stuff like that as well. I mean, traffic's a big thing too, but then you have to look at other businesses around you. What's going to draw? Do you have offices? I mean, the only one we obviously don't own and we lease is the mall. The mall location, but there it's a built-in audience. I mean, you have all the cars coming into your parking lot each day. You have people coming into the shop and stuff like that. So yes, you pay a little bit higher rent, but then per se, you're not really advertising and marketing as much because they're doing the marketing for us to draw them to the mall.
Yeah.
So a little different instances too when you're looking at properties and stuff.
Yeah. So you're looking for eyeballs is kind of the big thing. I think it was one of our first conversations when I met you. You were talking about the giant Chase Lounger or whatever it is, the giant Adirondack chair that you would put up on top of Fox River Brewing on the river, as just these ideas to just draw eyeballs. And that was a big part of your thought process, your decision making, and your marketing.
Right. I think it's eyeballs. And I think it's for us, we always say it's about the experience. It's creating the stories. You got to create experiences. And when you create experiences, obviously they create stories. And when you do that, that's where a lot of times like social media comes in. You take a look at our domes. We have 7 domes at Oshkosh. We have 4 domes at Fratellos and stuff like that. There's an experience going on there. There's a story going on there. And it's also being shared on social media by a lot of people, not us sharing. It's like another perfect example is it's like Melting Pot. There's an experience there when you walk in. It's fondue. Nobody else does fondue. Obviously, unless you do it at home and stuff like that. But what we do there is we create experiences, which creates stories, which creates memories. And if we can continue to do that at each one of our locations, that really helps us get the word out.
That's really interesting. The idea of creating stories is this way of word of mouth to spread, because we're so ingrained in stories in so many ways as a culture, as a people. That's fascinating. You mentioned your domes. Tell me about that story, because I remember those just came on the scene and were a huge hit. Walk me through where that started, where that idea all came from.
I got to give Jay credit on this again, which really hurts me to tell you that.
That domes were interesting is prior to COVID, we actually were looking at putting 1 to 2 domes out there. Where my youngest one goes to school at Northwestern, there was a restaurant that had one out front the year prior, which had been prior to 2019. And we were so intrigued. Every time we walked by, we said, all right, we got to at least get 1 or 2 of those. As soon as COVID was coming out, we're like, all right, let's not wait. Let's just get them in. And we've been fortunate. We've had great success. And I think our domes have been successful, obviously through COVID, because obviously you're in your own little bubble and stuff like that. But I think the ambiance of being on the river too, I think other places have tried domes. They haven't been as successful, because I still think you have to create an ambiance. And we're very fortunate enough with our staff and our management. They've done a really cool job of decorating them on the inside with the furniture that we put in the inside and stuff like that. We create boards and stuff like that, but we do allow our full menu to go as well, being served in the domes.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. And I know most people here are familiar, but maybe those that are listening, at Fox River Brewing Company, it's a river location, one of the best restaurant locations in the city. And in the summertime, it's a huge hit, obviously, because of the boat traffic and because of the outdoor patio. And during COVID, you had taken domes that would encapsulate the different tables and lounge areas outside so that people could dine and enjoy that same experience in the wintertime, which is a slow time for restaurants in Oshkosh. And I think it was a brilliant pivot and a brilliant way to make the wintertime much more profitable as well. I imagine that expands your seating, that expands capacity, that expands the overall revenue stream, and as I would imagine it, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for us too, is it allows us to keep more staff throughout the winter, because obviously we ramp up.
Okay,
we probably see anywhere from 350 to 400 outside, depending what we got for a layout on the patio. But with all that staff as well, it allowed us, by doing that, to keep some of that more staff on, so we're not training as much come spring and summer of the next year and stuff like that.
Sure.
And you go back there again, like we said earlier, domes, what does it do? It creates experience, it creates stories, it creates memories.
Yeah.
And really, our patio, what does our patio do in the summer? Same thing. We create an experience out there with all the boat docking going on, and just with our cocktail menus, with the glassware we did last year. So we do the exact same thing in the summertime that we do in the winter, to try to create those.
So when you're looking at kind of your restaurant portfolio, the key aspect to how you run your business is this creating an experience that would become a memory, that will become a story. And that's kind of how you look at branding and how you look at the atmosphere of your business.
Yeah, because each one is definitely unique. Every location, from Fratellos on the water in Appleton, you look at the one in the mall, you look at Melting Pot. We just got done remodeling that. It looks gorgeous inside. And of course, Oshkosh on the river. Each place is unique in its own way.
Yeah.
And I think being an independent, you have to do that. And the reason why is, if you're a chain, everybody in their head kind of has this, this brain peg. We call it a brain peg. Everybody knows what an Olive Garden is. They just know what it is and stuff like that. So when you're an independent, you have to create different type of memories and experience and stuff like that to make sure you set yourself different. Because the biggest difference between a chain restaurant and independent, they've got the dollars behind them marketing. They can put all the marketing billboards out there and everything out there, locations and stuff like that. They'll spend on real estate and stuff like that. So boy, I tell you, if you're an independent, you really got to make sure you're unique and different than your chain out there.
Do you have like a off-the-shelf recommendation if someone wants to be a franchise? Do you just shy away from it? You choose usually to be more independent. Is there kind of a trade-off that you guys look at?
We've done it. I mean, we've done Shakey's. We did for 30 some years. Just got done. We had Golden Corral for 15 years. Melting Pot we've had for, what is it now? 16?
Since 2003, we opened up Melting Pot.
Yeah, we've had that for quite a while. There are some great franchises out there. We just choose to go more our own way now, except for, of course, Melting Pot.
Yeah,
because that is so unique, and we kind of do our own thing anyways with that one.
Yeah, I think chains for, obviously you have corporate, but then you have franchisees who buy obviously in the chains of that. I think for some of those are good because a lot of times a franchisee, the reason why you do a chain is they basically train you. I mean, they teach you, from the cooking, they teach you from the bartending or whatever, marketing or whatever, they help you do it. Obviously, you have to pay a royalty, and stuff like that. And I think John and I, from a chain perspective, we learned a lot because Shakey's at one time was over 500, 600 units at one time. In fact, they were larger than Pizza Hut until Pizza Hut got bought out by PepsiCo. And once Pizza got bought out by PepsiCo, that's when they really escalated the numbers and stuff like that. But for a long time, Shakey's was probably the leader out there for a number of restaurants. So we learned a lot through Shakey's from that, from the franchise perspective.
And the other part we've learned at is the other franchisees. We've learned a ton through just interacting with these at meetings and everything else. I mean, the game room was a prime example.
Right.
At Shakey's, we learned it from another franchisee who had a smaller concept. And then Jay and I, our whole family flew out to Texas to see a friend of ours. And that's when we took it to the next level. That's you learn a lot from just other people. Most major ideas of a lot of chains come from the franchisees. And the franchisors learn from them then.
That's same with Melting Pot, because Melting Pot, I always go to the conference every year, and I always tell John the thing you learn more than anything else is from your franchisees sitting next to them, what ideas that they're doing and stuff like that. Melting Pot's a little bit different. There's probably only so much you can do with a pot.
So you got grills now.
Yeah, we got grills now. That's something unique and different.
Well, take me back again. So we got kind of sidetracked on these different restaurateur kind of questions. But so Shakey's was part of a family business. It was your family had started this, and you had been involved as a young age. What happened after that? When did it start to become your ownership? When did you all start to acquire these other restaurants or start these other restaurants, or how did that story unfold?
Well, I think Shakey's is. We knew the handwriting on the wall. It was been bought out by corporate by a number of times. We just saw that it wasn't going in the direction that we wanted it to go to. So Jay and I were on a boat one day and going down the river and looked over at the land at Oshkosh, and we said, "Hey, this would be a great place for a restaurant." and Jay was getting married and going out to Seattle, and Jay goes, "You got to see this new thing out there. They got craft beer out there." There wasn't any craft beer around here. So when we flew out there for the rehearsal, Jay, take it from there.
Yeah, we went out there and we were checking out the breweries and stuff like that. Now, if you can imagine, there's two guys who drank at that time probably Miller Lite, like everybody else was.
What year is this about?
95. Okay. Well, 95 is when we opened. So
93?
93 is when we went out there and we started. We always knew in the back of our minds, between myself, John, our wives, and Joe, is we wanted a place on the water. That was kind of our dream. So, and then when we had the opportunity to purchase a land, we wanted to, how do we make it unique and different? And that's when I said to John, you got to come out. You got to check out these breweries out here. So if you can imagine, in 95, when we opened, we were number 750. That's where we were. And today there's over 9,000 breweries. So that tells you how far, where we were, back then in Wisconsin. I think there was probably only a handful, probably only less than 10, 12 in Wisconsin. But we thought the cool thing is how unique would it be if you build something on the water, add the brewery to it and stuff like that too. You give it not only the water being the uniqueness, the brewery side of it being the uniqueness piece of that part of that. It's how that started.
We always laugh. We always say we got in the craft business before it was cool.
Yeah, that was way ahead of its time in 1995. Relatively novel idea, as you mentioned, just by the sheer statistics of it.
Oh, we had a lot of people like, I can't believe you don't have Miller Lite on tap, or you don't have Coors Light or whatever.
Yeah, how was that received?
We actually ended up putting it in for a while. We actually still have it in bottles and stuff like that. We weren't as crazy as a lot of other brewers that say, "You're going to drink our beer." No, we'll take your money. We'll just charge you the same price. So, it was interesting in the beginning. It was a fight. Our number one beer at the time was honey.
Right.
And now it's not even on the menu, but they wanted a sweeter beer then and stuff. It's just elaborated so many different ways now, and people are putting all these funky things into beer now, and we're fortunate we've got some great partners in the area too, which has helped elevate the whole beer knowledge.
How did you learn about crafting a beer at that time? This is a pretty new idea. The internet wasn't what it is now. What was that process like?
It was kind of interesting because when we opened in 95, Great Dane, if you're familiar with Great Dane in Madison,
yeah.
They opened up just before us. And so one of the things that John and I did is we went down and met the guys from Great Dane. And one of the owners from Great Dane worked at a company who built brewery equipment and sold brewery called Liquid Assets. And we said, hey, we've got a location. We want to put a brewery in. Would you be interested in maybe giving us a hand and stuff like that? He said, I'll tell you what, I'll do a deal with you. He said, I just left the company, Liquid Assets. Buy the equipment through me. He said, and then we'll charge you so much money for the first year. We'll train you on the equipment and we'll train your first brewmaster. Now, we knew the restaurant side of the business, which was interesting. They didn't know the restaurant side of the business. So we were able to help them from basically the restaurant side of the business. They helped us from the beer side. So that's kind of how the partnership worked. And Rob, who's still today, the partners are still there, who owned Great Dane, he was an awesome brewer, and so we were fortunate enough. Our first person that trained there, which was Al Bundy, which we always kind of got to laugh of.
Yeah, Al Bundy
being our first brewmaster, but he learned at the Great Dane, and then he came to us, and then they helped us set up the equipment and all that. So that's kind of how we got on the beer side. Because the restaurant side, we knew that side of it. It just wasn't the beer side. So we were able to have some great people help us.
Yeah. I mean, what was your favorite beer that you ended up making over the years?
I still like the honey and the Winnebago wheat, but
yeah, my favorite starting out when we first opened up was Scottish Ale, and back then it was the caber tossing Scottish Ale when we first opened, and that's still one of our probably one of our more popular beer. Probably the most popular beer is Blu Bobber,
which is now all of our favorites.
Yeah, and so we were years ago. We had a brewer that came from Boston, and he said, "I've got this idea that we did in Boston with the blueberries, floating in the blueberries, bobbing them up and down." And so we made the beer, and it started out as more of a summer beer, but it years ago it just exploded. Now it's a year-round beer. It's statewide. If you go watch a Brewery game, they serve it at the Milwaukee Brewers, and
one of their top craft beers there.
Yeah, so we've been blessed, and to have a brewery, to have a rock star beer. You would think every brewery would have a rock star beer, but it's so seldom that you see that. There's so many breweries that brew great beers, but they don't have one specific rock star. Like obviously New Glarus has Spotted Cow.
Yep.
And they still Dan brews great beers, but Spotted Cow is what pays the bills at that. And the same with us. Blu Bobber is what pays our bills as well. And then we have a lot of great beers with it. But you got to have that one signature beer that you can get with the Milwaukee Brewers, that you can get up in northern Wisconsin. And we're blessed that we have that one beer.
So where is it all distributed now, this Blu Bobber or your popular beers throughout the state? I mean,
we have 7 distributors throughout the state, and those 7 distributors, 4 of them are through General Beer, which is obviously based out of our Little Chute and stuff like that. But those 7 distributors, if it's Flanagan up in Door County, or if it's Dean's in Green Bay, up in Eagle River area, we're covered throughout the state. So if we get a beer in festival, if we're releasing a new beer, which we will be in March, and if it goes into festival, we can get in 39 festivals statewide.
Wow.
And that's a goal. Is you want to be you like to be statewide. So it allows you to go into a chain, say like Festival, or if it's like Woodman's or whatever. That way you have placement in all of them.
How do you get into these different distributors? Is there a trick? What was your process?
We're fortunate. I had a good relationship with Mark Scogan, and I said to him, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to get into the beer business, and we're going to go distribute. And he said, okay, I'll give you a shot. And let's face it, your shot only lasts so long. If you don't sell it, it ain't going to last. Well, they loved us so much that they put us all over the place. And what happens is when you get into festival, he's one of the leaders in the state, Mark Scogan and his group is. And we were fortunate that everybody else wants to be part of it, so they took us also.
Yeah. It's just, you go from a boat down the river to seeing a location to a restaurant, a brewery, and then statewide distribution for one of the beers when you really knew nothing about brewing going into that. It's really a remarkable story. And I think one thing I don't want to skip over is how you travel and you see this inspiration from other areas around the country, around the world, and then you're bringing those ideas back. And it seems like Wisconsin might be 5 years behind on this when somewhere else on the coast is ahead. And it's this way of being more novel here by bringing back these different ideas. And you said you would even walk around in the kitchen at some of these restaurants. So when you go out to eat, when you're on travel, you just walk into the kitchens and
photographs. I tell you what has made my life so easy is having phones that you can take photographs. So now you can walk in places because so many people do take photographs. They don't think nothing of it. So when you walk in, you're snapping pictures of the line, food and all that. Nobody says a word. And
Him and I are always sending photos back and forth all the time.
And we've got, my phone, like I was just out in New York a couple of weeks ago, and I've got so many different photos from different places. But, it's interesting. It's not only food photos. I love walking in retail shops, too, to look how they display things, because now if you walk in our place, we have 3 spices that we sell. We have 3 different sauces that that we sell as well. So I'm looking at different displays, how they display their sauces or spices or whatever price point. So we tend to dabble in a little bit of everything. We kind of like to be a one-stop shop, but we also, every time you walk in our door, if it's for a meal or whatever, we like to be changing something. So if all of a sudden you're looking at retail now for the holiday season, now you can pick up, one of the 3 spices, or you can pick up, like our brew sauce for our tenders. It's like been so popular. We've got that bottled now and stuff like that. Our Bam Bam sauce, we've got that, and we've got a barbecue sauce that's got a blueberry, a beer in it and stuff like that. So we're always trying to create a little bit more for people as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really interesting to kind of to take this idea of traveling and seeing other areas and bringing those ideas back and creating something here is really cool, and I think you've really mastered that. What are the things you're normally noticing when you're out? When if we look through your phone at the photos of the different restaurants, what are some of the common themes you tend to see? Is it like the way the kitchen's operating? Is it more of like a creative way of like they're displaying products? Is it the atmosphere? What are those types of things that you're usually looking at?
I think it's items. It's certain items. What's on the plate presentation.
So it's the actual, okay.
Yeah, it's different things. You tend to look at. A perfect example is if you come into our place now at our locations, we do a lot with New Zealand red deer as well as elk. I mean, if you look at New Zealand, they've done a great job of raising the elk as well as red deer. They're healthier than regular meat. They're healthier than chicken. They're lower on calories and stuff like that. So we're also trying to look at the healthy side of it too, but also being creative enough on the plate presentation. So like you can come in now, you can get a elk burger with venison bacon on top of that. You can get venison meatloaf we have now. You can get a venison BLT. You can get one day we're featuring spaghetti with elk meatballs and stuff like that. So we're also trying to create different items that are unique to what somebody else is serving. Our goal is not to serve what somebody else is serving. I mean, granted, you're always going to have some common things like steak, hamburgers, or whatever, but it's trying to take 10% of your menu that other people in Oshkosh aren't serving. I mean, that's kind of always our goal. So I don't want to say they can only get it there, because obviously if it's on our menu for a while, somebody else is probably going to take the idea.
Yeah.
So we got to constantly be thinking what's out there that we can bring back to Oshkosh or Appleton that's different. I mean, we flame a lot of stuff. You walk in, our wings now flame. We have a dessert that flames.
Octopus flames.
Yeah, our octopus in Appleton, that flame. It comes out there and we put it on the table and we flame it right in front of you and stuff like that. So we'll do that for a while, and after a while we'll change and we'll do something else and stuff like that. So
how do you, just from like looking at a business side, how do you vet the different ideas you get? How do you know if you want to try something, if you need to kill this idea, or if the idea is good or bad? What's kind of your way of measuring those types of things?
I think that we put it to our management and we start putting it out there and we test it. We'll do daily specials with it and things like that. But it every day is unique in our industry. Our managers sometimes scratch their head at us and say, "Really?" And they do it and they're like, "Oh, that really works."
Yeah.
Well, I think too is the computer system you have now. We have Toast, which is probably one of the most well-received POS systems out there in the country right now. And you get numbers. We get numbers on exactly what it's selling. I mean, if something's not moving, there's no sense of keeping it on the menu. It's taking real estate and stuff like that. I mean, certain things we may keep a little bit longer. Certain times we may adjust the name of it, or we may adjust where it is in the menu to see if it will sell. And certain things just don't sell as well. And so then you switch it off. We're fortunate enough. We do our menus in our office and stuff. So for us to run off 200 menus and change a couple items, we can do that. We're not spending money having somebody else create the menu for us. We do it ourselves, so that allows us the flexibility to make those changes.
And every time we do, one of my friends will come up to me and say, "You took off my favorite item." And I'm like, "It's all math. It's totally math. We don't make any selection. It's all math."
Well, I want to touch on, we alluded to it a little bit before, but the decision to buy a lot of your real estate, somewhat uncommon for restaurant owners. What are kind of your reasons for why you do it? Some people would see it as doubling down on risk. What are your thoughts?
Well, at least something after 25 years, you got something.
Yeah.
You have something to, if you ever want to get out of it or whatever you want to do, you've got something. But our biggest thing is we always wanted something really, really unique. And we always wanted to keep it in our control, that we didn't have a landlord all of a sudden, which happens a lot. After 20 years, they'll come in and say, "Oh, we're going to double your rent." Well, then it just doesn't feasibly make sense to do it. This way, we have something always.
I think that, John, we learned from our parents.
Yes.
My parents always said, if you're going to do something, try to always own the real estate. And I think a lot of that is his experience over the years in Shakey's, where a lot of guys did really well in Shakey's in certain locations. And as soon as the landlord sees the volume, then all of a sudden when their rent would come up, all of a sudden they'd be jacking the rent. And my dad will tell us stories from years ago, how many friends of his had to relocate because the rent got too high and stuff like that. So he always said, because he always owned every one of his Shakey's, he owned the real estate. He said, own your real estate. Now, obviously, the mall, we couldn't own the real estate, but there are very few places that will, and we've done other concepts and stuff like that where we, like Milwaukee, we went down the third ward, we rented there for a while and stuff like that. So we have done some over the years, but we've always found out that if you can own your own real estate, that's the best thing to do. Like John said, when you're all done, at least you have something to sell at the end of the day.
Well, what would you say was kind of one of your biggest flops as a business, as one of the biggest failures you found?
We've had them over the years, and I probably look at Milwaukee's a perfect example. We went to Milwaukee is right when the banks started crashing. I forget what year that was. If it was 2008
the housing one, what the hell?
Yeah, and stuff like that. And so that didn't work out well. And then we were lucky because we had somebody from Madison came in and they wanted that specific location. So it didn't take us long to think twice on getting rid of that location and stuff like that. We've been blessed. We really haven't had them. I mean, you look at Golden Corral as a perfect example. I mean, realistically, the only reason Golden Corral closed was COVID. I mean, buffets would have been a challenge to try to reopen that back up and stuff like that. So I don't think it really was a failure. I think it just came down to certain times there's nothing you can do. It's out of your hands, and COVID was out of our hands for a buffet restaurant.
And if we didn't do it, then we would have been way in debt because at least when we sold the real estate, we made enough money. We paid everybody off and didn't have to worry about anything. We had no debt later.
So owning the real estate actually benefited you in that situation.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. You weren't sitting with a lease trying to figure that out and stuff like that. But we've been fortunate. We've never gotten that big where I could say we really had something that it was a failure and stuff like that. There were certain things that we got to, one time we were in Milwaukee, we did a Brazilian restaurant. We did that for a while. Then we were fortunate enough the company wanted to buy a training store and they ended up buying that from us and stuff like that. So there are things that we got into probably, I want to say they were a failure, but they didn't do as well. And so we ended up getting out of them. I think we were always smart enough to realize that, all right, if it's not doing as well, making the money, making the return that we think it should be, then let's see other ways to move on and do something else and stuff like that. And a lot of people know too, is we had a management company for years that we managed a lot of properties for developers. And typically what happened, a developer would go in and they would rent it to somebody else and they didn't make it. And so they asked us to come in and take a property over. We'd take it over for a short time till we could sell it to somebody, they could sell it to somebody else, and we've done other things. We did in
Lambeau
2003. In 2003, we opened a melting pot. We did Lambeau Field. They approached us to do it. That's when they had a local, it was, I think PMI was doing all the food and stuff for Lambeau Field. Well, they ended up bringing in Levy. There was so much flack that they were letting the local guys go. Then they went out and tried to find other people to come in there, which we were fortunate enough to be one of them. And then we developed 4 concepts for the Packers and stuff. And then we were there for a year and a half. Then we got bought out by Levy because that was the only part that Levy really didn't own in there, run. And so they wanted to take over 100%. And Packers must have felt comfortable at that point that allowed Levy to take it over. So then Levy ended up purchasing. But the same with the Timber Rattlers. If you look at the Timber Rattlers, when they built the new stadium, they had hired our company. We ran all the food concessions for, I don't even know, 7-8 years.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, John and I always laugh. I mean, you look at Timber Rattlers, we did snow cones, we did cotton candy. I mean, we've done pizza. I don't think there's anything that we have never done in our lifetime that can be served, basically, from concessions to restaurants.
Yeah, I'm blown away with how you're able to just apply the same framework. You come in and you can manage these other kind of vacant restaurants in a way and make them profitable for people and then exit. What are you doing different than what other people can do?
I don't know. It seems like we developed great people and they stay with us. I mean, Jackie, our GM at the mall, has been with us since we've opened. And she's been with us 26, 27 years now, whatever it is. We've had so many people. I like handing out watches after 20 years and doing special things for 25. It's the greatest thing in the world for Jay and I to do it. We love it. We've got a number of people we've done it with.
Yeah, I think
and other people coming there.
Right. I think it's a culture. I mean, we try to provide a good, solid culture for everybody that works for us and stuff like that. And when we take on like Lambeau Field, I mean, I got to tell you, when we do Lambeau Field, John and I, Heidi, Doreen, Joe, we're all there working because sometimes those are different experiences for us as well. But we always say if you put forth the hard work and the time into it, you can make it successful because there's nobody in this room today and anybody watching, nobody wants to fail. So you just got to figure it out really quick on your feet is how to make it successful. If you can imagine at Lambeau Field, we were in the atrium, and on the back side we're on the concourse. So you could serve people from the atrium, which is the way it is today, and you could serve on the concourse on the 50-yard line. So on game day, when there's 80,000 people there, we were at two on the concourse, and then we had the 2 on the inside. Plus we had a restaurant. Plus we had an ice cream parlor in Lambeau Field for those
and a
2
coffee.
years. Yeah, and so we were busy. I mean, we learned really quick.
And we brought all our managers in to help us.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the nice thing about being a little bit, and we're not a huge company, but we're larger now. When game day came, like John said, we could bring our GMs, and they thought it was fun. It was fun. And back then, it was so much easier for staffing than it is today. I mean, today's a whole different world in staffing. But
Tell me about that a little bit, like how you're able to survive with that. Anybody that's older than 2 years old knows how difficult it is for restaurant owners to maintain staff or to do anything with staffing. And you're seeming, at least on the outside, looks like you're doing pretty well with it.
The struggle every day. We struggle with it, but we literally never stop hiring. It's 24/7. We're always, when someone comes in, or we're always trying to recruit all the time. But I think a lot's got. We got a great base, and I think once they get there, they realize that it's more family. It's not working for nothing against the chain, but you see Jay and I in there helping you every day, making sure if you got a problem, you can let us know. Our GM's been with us for a long time. It's the continuity, I think, makes a big difference there.
Yeah, and like John said, it's a base. You got, as long as you have that base, you can survive. And we're a little fortunate. Sometimes being bigger is good in a restaurant size, because if all of a sudden we lose 1 or 2, say they call in sick or whatever, we still can make it happen. It's when you have a very small kiosk or something like that, where you only have, say, like 2 or 3 on, and then one calls in sick, you're really hurting. And I think what helps us is because of our size and the amount of staff that it takes to open up every day, if we're missing one here and there, we still can get by. I mean, we pride ourselves. We're open 7 days a week. I mean, I don't care what restaurant you go to. If you go down, other than Melting Pot, you can go every day, 11 a.m., our door's open. You go to Melting Pot, 4 days a week, it opens up at 4 o'clock, 3 days a week, at noon, and those doors are always open. I think that's, even after COVID, we've always prided ourselves that we were going to be open 7 days a week. And if there's one thing my dad and mom always said, is when they pull the door, make sure you're open. We've always remembered that, and we still, to this day, are open 7 days a week.
What's next for you two? What are you looking at? What's towards the future? Or what's left of it, right? Yeah.
No, we're fortunate that we can travel and we can do what we want to do now, probably better than ever, because of the people that are director of ops, our GMs, our assistants. We've got a really strong management staff, and if we need to get away, we can get away. And the great thing is there's us and our wives. So we're very fortunate that way, because when, I've got to go see my son tonight, so I'm flying to Oklahoma to see him. And you just got back with your daughter,
right?
And so we can leave, and there's always somebody around too. Usually helps. I think
the biggest thing is we don't micromanage. We allow them to do what they need to do and stuff like that. I mean, we always say there's never going to be a mistake where it's going to lock you up. And when the guest needs something or staff needs something, just make the decision. And if it's right or wrong, we can figure it out the next day. I said, don't worry about it. And honestly, having cell phones, having computers, I mean, no matter what. I mean, I hate to say today, you really never leave. I don't care if you're in Florida or Oklahoma or wherever you are. You don't really get away from it, because you always got your cell phone with you. You always got your iPad with you, your computer with you. So you can stay intact 24/7 pretty good. But like John said, we're fortunate. We get great GMs, great chefs. We're blessed that way.
Do you see any other business opportunities you're interested in, or you want to go for, or some in the next kind of season of life?
I'm going to listen to your answer.
Yeah. I think right now more than anything, I think we've done a good job is just staying where we're at.
Sure.
And with staffing levels where they're at, and it's staffing some of it, but it's food costs. I mean, food costs in our industry, it doesn't matter what restaurant you're at. You really realistically could print a menu every time you get an invoice coming through your door right now, because you don't know what the price of fish is going to be today versus tomorrow. You don't know what the price of meat's going to be and stuff like
Lettuce,
that.
Anything.
Yeah, everything. You just don't know. And shortages. I mean, when COVID finally came back, what happened was, it was interesting was a lot of the pack size all went to grocery stores, because everybody was going to grocery stores. Nobody's going to restaurants. So when all of a sudden all the restaurants started coming back, all of a sudden we didn't have the right pack size. All of a sudden we were getting containers either too small or way too big. And to this day, that's still happening. They still haven't figured that out. When that country shut down for those 70 days, it created a lot of hiccups that are still there today. So I think right now, staying relevant, being open 7 days a week, stay in tune to who we are. I think that's where we're going to be. Now, does that mean other opportunities may come? But I think right now we got to be diligent of just keeping what we got going.
Yeah. When we came out, we used to only have one supplier for years. Always just had one. And now we have 3. That's the only way it's going to work, because one guy can't guarantee us food every day. So that's why we've had to literally change to 3.
Wow.
And I think the big thing is too is I think it's so critical right now. People are looking for experiences because you because of pricing, you may not be going out as much or whatever. So I think for us, I think we just got to recreate experiences, recreate those stories. And, we got 4 places. So we're still, we're busy with the 4 places. And then you have the wholesale business. And wholesale is interesting too, is you got to come out with new products. Because right now there's so many new seltzers, but there's so many new, they're RTD, which are ready to drinks. Basically, they're cocktails in a can. That's very competitive to craft beer because there's only so much shelf space out there and stuff like that. So we've got 3 new beers where we're rolling out this year too and stuff like that. So we have a lot going right now. So I think for us, just stay where we're at and just keep what we got going, keep it rolling.
Yeah. Well, I think we have a couple folks in the audience that would like to ask questions. Probably mostly Andy, because he's an up and coming next generation chef over here. We'll ask you to use the microphone, Andy, so we can get your question on the record. So the question's kind of what allowed you to scale, and was that always part of the plan? Yeah.
Right. No. Back years ago, from a staffing perspective, was a lot easier. It just was, and there was a lot of opportunities too because you didn't have as many restaurants either, specifically on the water and stuff like that. Because
banks liked us then.
Yeah. Yeah. Money was a lot easier than it probably is today for a restaurant and stuff like that. But I think there was we were fortunate. There was a lot of opportunities, and we had a lot of communities that would come to us. Ashwaubenon and Green Bay. We did a project along the water there. Obviously, Third Ward and stuff like that. So we've been very fortunate enough because my mom and dad did such a great job of what they did, had such a great reputation. It helped us, get into the business. But I just think a lot of it was we were young, we were aggressive, and we were able to put a lot on our plate. But we were able to hire a lot of staff. I think for me the frustrating part of Milwaukee was the perfect example. I drive to Milwaukee, everything would be great at the restaurant, and all of a sudden, another restaurant would open up in Milwaukee because you have a lot more competition in Milwaukee. All of a sudden, they take your chef. They pay your chef more money, they offer more benefits or whatever it is. So now I'm going back to Milwaukee again, trying to find that executive chef in Milwaukee, which is more challenging because you got more restaurants and stuff like that. And I think after a while, we did that for a while. And then I think our game plan over time was to get back within a 30-mile drive. Yeah. And I think when we had Stevens Point, we had Green Bay, obviously we had Milwaukee, and we started slowly working our way back to that 30-mile radius because we could see staffing was becoming an issue already. And part of it, what's that?
What year was this? And you could start seeing.
You could probably start seeing it almost 10 years ago. And the reason why I say that is because back then you didn't have, the Walmarts, you didn't have the Sam's, you didn't have all
Quick
those.
Trip.
Yeah, you just didn't have those places because all of a sudden now they were paying more wages than we were. So now all of a sudden you could work. You didn't have to be in the back of a kitchen. You didn't have to be on a line that gets really extremely hot or gets cold or whatever. And all of a sudden you can make that same kind of money and stuff like that. So I think as these companies started getting larger, their pay scale started getting more. You could see it was going to be tougher and more challenging to hire them because, as John said earlier, we're nights and weekends, where a lot of these businesses could pay the same amount or more and you didn't have to work weekends, or you got every third weekend off, however it would work. So I think that was a big thing why we started scaling back to we did and why we got back to the third. And a lot of that too, Andy, was real estate was a lot more. Like we were going to build a restaurant in Madison. And the only reason why we never built a restaurant in Madison, we could never find the land at the right price. And so we decided to, not do Madison. Because Madison, we could at least anywhere we want. And every time we found a location, it was always a lease. They never wanted to sell. And so we finally said, no, our model was we got to own. And because we never owned property in Madison, we never opened up in Madison. That's the reason why we never went there and stuff. So I don't know if that answers a lot of it, and stuff like that. But I will say, I applaud you for what you're doing, and I also applaud you, like I told you the other day, starting small is what you want to do. Start small and then work your way up. It's kind of like us. We were a little different. In 95, when we opened up the brewery, I got to tell you, the first 2-3 days. John,
I would have sold that place for 10 cents more than we paid for it. We were like, why did we leave pizza?
Oh my God. The first 2-3 days when we opened that up, it was unbelievable. People were standing outside and people were coming in, and all of a sudden, here we are, pizza guy. We had a small menu. All of a sudden we got this massive big menu and we're doing steaks in the kitchen, and all of a sudden we're brewing beer. It was a learning experiences. But I always say, and Andy, you know this too, is in our business, as long as you keep grinding and you keep working hard, you're going to figure it out because you don't want to fail. And every day we open a Fox River Brewery from day one in 95, we learned a lot each day. But each day that night we tweaked it. The next day we moved on. So it didn't take us too long to figure it out either and stuff like that. But And the other thing too is, for us, is we never really wanted to go against ourselves from a competition per se. And that's why you see the different unique concepts. That's why you see a melting pot. That's why you see a Fratellos. That's why you see a Fox River Brewery. That's why I saw a Golden Corral. Because people say, why did you do a Golden Corral? Because it wasn't competing to what we were doing. We were always looking at different audiences or a guest going to 3 of our places. And so we work really hard at making sure the mall is different than Oshkosh. It's different than Fratellos. And obviously the melting pot is because we want people to be able to go to all 4 properties.
Gentlemen, you have a beautiful location there that something to take your hat off to. You're also very close to and have a beautiful view of something called Highway 41 or Interstate. I always thought the fewer people we get crossing that bridge, the better off we are. Given to take a right turn in Oshkosh. But having said that, have you been able to utilize that at all? Number one, has it been beneficial to you? And number two, if it is, how have you been able to? How have you been able to do it?
Well, we're fortunate that we are where we're at. We draw a lot of people come through the boating and everything else. They get used to us. They come there, but then in the winter, they come back here because we're unique and come to see the brewery and everything. We have drawn so many people from Illinois and Milwaukee and different parts of the country. I mean, the mall's a prime example. The UP, they have no place to shop, so they all come down from the UP to Fox River Brewery at the mall. Then what we do is we tell them about the other stores, so then they come down, we'll make a day of it. We'll come down to Oshkosh, or we'll go over to the other restaurants we have. 41's been huge for us because it just brings a ton of people to our area.
I just always thought the more Illinois place we have in the parking lot of your place, the better off we are.
No, I agree. I agree with John. 41, and you also too is we have the 3rd largest university in Oshkosh, the UW Oshkosh. So if you look at the people that come off of 41 that come to the university at Oshkosh, because that was kind of the reason why we loved the location for multiple reasons. You obviously had the water, we had the park across from us, so we knew nobody had ever developed that, and we had a boat landing over there, and we had boat docking going out over there. We had the 3rd largest university. You had, at that time was probably 16, 17, 18,000 students and professors in that there, and then like John said, you had the easy access off 41. So that for us was an absolutely perfect position because it positioned everything that we were looking for.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to ask. Originally you guys were looking in the downtown area.
Mm-hmm.
For that, we're going to talk about that process. I mean, you're close, but
Right.
There's a story behind that. You obviously have a great site that's worked out, and then the other part of that question is, if you have a young aspiring entrepreneur, there's one thing they should do and one thing they shouldn't do to be successful. What would that be? And then, what is it about Oshkosh that's really kind of kept you here for a long time and the community and what?
So the question was downtown, what the story was with deciding downtown or not deciding in downtown. And then the second question was if you could give an entrepreneur good advice and or what they should do and what they shouldn't do. So
Location was unique because at the time it was under Dennis Schwab had the property at the time. And we went into Dennis's office and we said, Dennis, we want to buy your property. He said, well, I don't want to sell. And Jay and I said, well, we're not going to lease. He said, okay. He says, then I'll be your partner. Jay and I said, you're not a Supple. You can't be our partner. And as funny as we all know Dennis, and every time I saw him, he goes, I should have never done it. I should have been your partner. I should have been your partner. You can explain the rest.
Well, I think a lot of it, to what you were saying, Rob, was the location was actually right across from the chamber. It used to be the old concrete plant. I can't remember what it was called at the time. Yeah, and because when we looked at that time, we didn't know that property, which Dennis had, because if you remember, Dennis didn't have it. Wally had it from Robbins, and Wally was looking at developing it as well. So Wally kind of had it tied up. And we didn't know that either. But once we looked at, was it Cook and Brown you had mentioned? Yeah, Cook and Brown. Then I think there was a lot of issues in the ground at that time, and it took us, a while to figure that out. But once we figured out the other location was available, we knew that would be, we felt that would be probably even a better location for us with the location. But it's interesting enough, you talk about that. When we started putting the first, basically shovel in the ground where that location is, remember we hit those concrete tunnels. We were 100,000 over budget before we even came out of the ground because of the concrete tunnels. Now you got guys that have already put our houses up, everything up. And if you can imagine, we're sitting there going, really $100,000 more? And that was back then.
Back in 95.
Yeah, and stuff. But But I think the reason why we love Oshkosh more than anything, and we've been here, we live here and stuff like that, it's family. I mean, it just has.
We know everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody knows us.
Yeah, we all went to high school here and stuff like that, and I think knowing as many people as we know, and it's just been a lot of fun. We've done a lot of fundraiser. We do a lot of stuff with the chamber, but we do a lot of stuff with the CVB with Amy. We've been blessed. People love Oshkosh. I mean, I look at Amy at CVB. I look at John Casper for all the years what you've done for the city of Oshkosh. It's been great for us. And any advice I would always have to anybody, I would always say, step out, take the gamble. As long as you're willing to work and put forth the time and the effort into what you're doing, you will be successful because you will figure it out and stuff like that. And I think so many people get into something and sometimes they're not always prepared for it, or they don't always want to work it and stuff like that. And specifically in our industry, you gotta want to work 7 days a week, because really that's what it's going to take for a while. You can't worry about days off. You can't worry about going home early and stuff like that. And I think John and I have proven ourselves that we can be successful by putting the time and putting the effort into it. But Oshkosh has been great. It's been a great city for us, and we appreciate all the business over the years, because you can honestly, we've been around since 1968. So we've been serving Oshkosh for quite a while. That's why we're on the Legends.
Anything they should not do as a young entrepreneur
is not to get into something you don't know.
Yeah, don't be undercapitalized.
Yeah, those are the two biggest things: is not having enough capital and not having the knowledge of what you're doing. I mean, I don't want to see a lot of people always think they know the restaurant business because you go out to eat and you feel like you can critique your meal, you can critique your beer, and Andy's laughing. We all know how that goes and stuff like that. But there's a lot to know in a restaurant, and it's not just. It's just not the food, it's the service side of it. And there's a whole thing that you're dealing with. And you have to understand, in our industry too, we work with a lot of 17, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds. It's their first job and stuff like that. So, and it's to me, it's the fun part about the job is when you see people starting out at 18, 19, and they go through college and they go through a different career. I mean, look at the people that have been senators and police officers over the years that started out in our business and stuff like that. There's a lot to be said of waiting on tables and stuff like that, because once you wait on tables, you have a whole different perception on how it all works, as well as work in the kitchen, the same thing.
Yeah. Any other questions, John? Yeah.
Brewed some unique, interesting, great beers over the years. What's your inspiration? How do you come up with the variety, the selection?
We are blessed. We have a brewmaster, Andrew, but we also have a number of other brewers, and we're a little bit unique. All our brewers brew beer, and everybody's got a different personality, different style to what they like. And they all are great brewers. We allow them to brew their style they like. And that's why you see hazy IPA, a regular IPA. That's why you see so many different styles, lagers that we do and stuff like that, is because each brewer has something they enjoy brewing more than the other guy next to him and stuff like that. And we allow them to brew. And then we've really changed it up a little bit the last couple of years too, is because each batch of beer we talked about earlier has a story to it. So the only way you can brew a beer, you have to have a story. You have to have a name and you have to have a story. And so that a lot of times inspires the beer that we're doing and stuff like that. I mean, we're rolling out, we just rolled out a no-wake lager that just came out under 100 calories that just literally just went on draft. We have another beer coming out. It's called Freaky Tiki. We're releasing that, and it's a milkshake pineapple IPA, which is really cool and stuff. So, I mean, we're always trying to figure out what the newest beer is, but what the style people are looking for. And but like I said, we're blessed. We got 5 guys that can actually brew great beer, and that's why you see so many different one-offs at our place, is because each one has their own style.
Any other questions for the Supple Brothers today? Well, yeah.
Big fan of the Captain Crunch chicken tenders. So where did the inspiration come behind the food part of some of those ideas?
But Jay and I love to eat. You can't tell Jay as much as you can tell me, but we eat out a lot, and we're always researching, and it is the same thing with our chefs. We tell our chefs we're always looking for something really, really unique, and that was that recipe was brought in when we first opened by our first chef. He brought that in, and it's just, we're very fortunate. We, like Jay said, we don't micromanage. We're always looking for different things.
Yeah, if you look at the the Captain Crunch tenders, they started with us in '95, and to this day, it's the most popular by numbers. It doesn't matter if it's Fox River Brewery, Oshkosh, the mall, or Fratellos. That's the number one thing served in each one of those locations.
Drives our chefs nuts.
And so
That and white chicken chili.
Yeah.
Those are top things. They
Right.
they can do charred octopus. They can do all these fancy things. So what do you always have number one, guys? And it brings it home.
Yeah, and what's cool is it came with Chef Channing Boyer in 1995. He was the one that brought those two items specifically, and those are the two items that are still with us at 3 of our locations and stuff like that. We don't flame it; we just serve it.
Yeah.
Well, this was a real privilege having you all to share some knowledge and your backstory, and also just allowing the entrepreneurs who are ambitious in whatever business sector, whether it's a restaurant or something else, to see your success is really inspiring to everybody. So we want to just give you a round of applause and thank you so much for your time today, for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you both, gentlemen.